All right. So we finished the last episode talking about AI and how we're using on the site. General discussions on AI. Now I think we want to talk and just jump into commercial real estates. Commercial real estate, not plural. Commercial real estate and how it's going to affect careers, positions that are existing and have a certain status quo today, and what they're going to look like a year from today, 5 years from today. So I don't know where we start. This is interesting. I think the beautiful thing about real estate is it is tangible, but there's evolution and speed and efficiency and opportunity galore coming if you do it right. So let's jump into wherever we're going to jump into with this one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many examples. Let me start with one that is like at the base level, and that's when you get your job. Let's just start there. So there's this process where a hiring manager drafts a job description. So you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Drafts a job description, and there's a tedious process that goes into that. And then they post a job on a job board, and then resumes start to come in. And there have been tools thus far, like AI sort of tools, but like nothing that compares to what's coming now. But where I'm going is the very first step, you get 100 resumes in, you go, okay, there's 15 that look like they could be a fit, but I don't want to interview all 15, or at least I don't want a subject matter expert, one of my practitioners, interviewing all 15. And so the hiring manager, generally a part of the HR team, will call all 15 and do a screening interview. I think those screening interviews are done by AI, or they should be, or most of them will be. Mm-hmm. That's my prediction. In fact, I would assume many groups are already thinking that, because then you can quickly go from 15 to 5, and then you can do now the human interviews. So anyway, that's the first use case, and we could literally come up with hundreds.
Yeah, this is a use your own imagination. Where we are in the world today, right now.
Some are imagination, some are real, but yes.
Yeah. I think the amount of in-house, there's a lot of third-party technology that people pay a lot for subscriptions for. And I think with ChatGPT is on my mind. I think with all the AI that's coming out and all the access you get to advanced coding and advanced technology, there's going to be a plethora of just in-house, exactly customizable to what I'm doing software that comes out that people are going to use, whether it's for property management, asset management, portfolio management, even people's in-house acquisitions. I don't know that Excel goes away. Maybe Excel probably does go away for acquisitions, but not in terms of training, which is actually interesting because it's so transparent, which is why we use Excel. But I think all of those things just proliferate. It speeds up much faster, and people get their own customizable in-house.
You're describing bespoke tools, right?
Yes.
Bespoke tools. It's interesting. So many know here that I work at Stablewood, and our CTO, he and I were having this conversation about almost this very thing. And his prediction is that software as a service largely goes away.
Yes.
And the reason why is because with these tools, you don't need to use a solution that someone else built. You could build your own solution.
Exactly.
And you pair no code, which has already been like building momentum, with now natural language models. And so basically you prompt a tool that then builds what you need. Why would you go through the headache of setting up a Salesforce CRM? I mean, that's a process in and of itself. If you could actually just build your own CRM in the same amount of time.
Right.
Right. And so that's what you're describing. And
yes.
I mean, coming back to the recruiter, that's in essence what they're doing, right? They're building a tool, a bespoke tool that allows them to screen candidates quickly. Let me ask this, right? And whether it relates to the candidate, let's say you're a job seeker.
Yes.
And all of a sudden this changes, and you no longer have a screening interview to get past that first round. You have some form of an AI interview. How does that change the way you prepare?
I think first and foremost, you got to realize that you're going to be recorded, and it's not a, you go in there, and so you're going to need to be a little more polished than you think, because that is going to live on forever. Many people are going to see it. There's no, word of mouth of how did it go. So you're going to need to prepare more, and the way you do that is by getting, coaching and prepping. And this kind of leads back to what we were talking about before, where you just need to get your reps in and just understand what may be coming, and using these language models, using ChatGPT to train you is what you're going to need to be focusing on. So the biggest thing I think that changes, though, is those first round interviews used to be all about, how do I make that personal connection? And we used to coach people all the time, and we still do. We still do. That is it's the beer test or the plane test, whatever you want to call it. You want to impress upon this person that if you're stuck in an airport or you're in a plane for a long period of time, or you're out getting a beer, this person's going to enjoy spending time with you. That somewhat goes out the window, because there's a lot of non-verbal cues that happen in those first round interviews. So I don't exactly know how this all transpires, but for me, you have to be much more technically proficient and just have much more solid answers that are less about a personal interaction or a warm smile or anything like that, which is going to be interesting. I didn't really, think deeply about all that, but that interpersonal.
Well, imagine this. So take the tool Vowel, VOWEL.com, right? So they are a Zoom alternative that's AI powered. So how it works when you're in a Vowel meeting is it records as the meeting is going on, or a one-on-one as the interview goes on. It auto produces a transcript, and then an AI is reading the transcript, summarizing it, basically creating a meeting notes in real time. You can call to certain segments of the meeting or the interview using this. Imagine a hiring manager using that, and you are the candidate. And imagine the hiring manager now can clip pieces and share that with the subject matter experts who ultimately are going to make the decision, right? So when you think about the hiring manager, and this is no disrespect to the hiring manager, they're not experts in commercial real estate. They're experts in finding talent that they can then pass to a team that does the second round interviews. In this way, it's almost like the first round is your second round. And so being able to demonstrate competency at that first stage is going to be key, right? They may ask technical questions in that first round that they otherwise wouldn't have, that will be seen because that interaction was recorded, transcribed, summarized by an AI. Yeah, how you answer those first round questions actually matter a lot more.
Well, you know what's going to be interesting is the classic question, do you have any questions for me? Right? Yeah. Do you prepare for that? Is the AI model going to be trained to answer those questions? And I wonder,
No, go ahead.
And I wonder if part of the interview is seeing how well you know how to manipulate and deal with the AI interaction that you're having, because that is key to being prepared for this change that we're all experiencing.
Okay, so I think we can agree that a person's ability to work with AI is going to be a new job requirement, if you will, and specifically within what's happening in a commercial real estate transaction, whatever it is. So one, you're talking about proficiency, which is, you touched on that. But two is, okay, if that person's going to be coming in, they need to be proficient in whatever subject matter it is, and they need to be proficient in the new tactics that we use to execute our strategy. So do they have experience prompting whatever it is, whatever tool is, whatever they're using, or their own model, their own whatever it is? And so that is where you're going to jump straight into, are you going to be able to produce an outcome faster and better than that person or not? I think we just get to the outcome and the result a lot faster by having AI see how proficient will this person be in dealing with me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And getting outcomes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I want to shift a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Into like the actual day-to-day of just being in commercial real estate and whatever role you're in. And Spencer, when you and I worked together, there was this conversation about a lot internally about you bring these experts, these great talent from some of the best places in the world. Sometimes you find these hidden gems, and the hidden gems are everywhere, right? You bring these people in, and there's this constant problem with inundating these people with mundane tasks.
Yeah.
Meeting minutes is a perfect one, right? Like having this person sit there, making with their powerful brain, and making sure that they're taking adequate notes rather than critically thinking about the conversation that's being had and being able to respond and offer ideas of which they're more than capable of doing.
Or even being part of the meeting. So that's the other thing, right? Sometimes you'll have a meeting, it's 30 minutes, and someone joins the meeting because there's 5 minutes in which they need to hear something. Imagine the meeting, there's an AI attending for them that then summarizes their piece, and they read it rather than attending.
Like being the crowd in the in the meeting. You don't need to be there. You just need to be there for that one piece. Yeah. So that's one low-hanging fruit opportunity. Now, I think the more challenging stuff, which is solvable, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, but there is going to be innovation in actual underwriting. Again, people who toil around in models, which is critical in your early stage to really understand the foundations of how financial modeling works and how the cash flows work. But there's going to be maybe we call it a revolution. So where, again, these brilliant minds aren't spending late hours just crunching numbers. You might fundamentally understand what's going on, but you still have to crunch all the numbers, and you're not adding value there. So there's going to be
it's happening.
A revolution.
It's happening.
Speak to
that. If you think about real estate underwriting, and I don't want to get too much into the proprietary of Stablewood, but let me give an overview, and you can fill in the gaps yourself. If you think about real estate underwriting, it's an exercise first in aggregating information, right? So you can't make an investment decision until you have complete information, or hopefully you have complete information. And ideally, you have information that the rest of the market doesn't have. Because if you have information the rest of the market doesn't have, you can either gain alpha or you can avoid downside. And that process of aggregating information in the traditional real estate way is a laborious process. And because it's such a laborious process, you need more people. You oftentimes need higher cost people because they need to know how to find the right information, what information is relative. And because it takes so long and has a higher cost to it, you can look at fewer deals. And so I think about a traditional institutional acquisitions team. OM comes in the door. It hits a producer, director, VP, someone who's seasoned in these things, and they say, okay, that looks like it fits within our box, right? So they're actually the first screen. That OM comes in the door, and maybe they get 10 OMs in a day, and one of them they go, okay, this makes sense. Now, what do they do with the other 9 OMs? They throw them in the trash. I mean, they're PDFs, but you get the point, right? They throw them in the trash. And if you think about those 9 OMs, they're full of really interesting, valuable information that they don't capture, right? But they can't, because it's just their eyes and brain and a notepad. And so they pass it to an analyst. And what does the analyst do? That's the 1 out of 10. The analyst reads the OM. How long does it take to read a 40-page OM? It takes a while, right? They read the OM, and they extract from that OM the data points that matter. And they put it in some format that they can retain it. In a most traditional way, Excel. Maybe on a notepad. Maybe in a Google Doc or in a Word doc. And they extract information, and then they begin the process of accumulating other information that creates increased insights around that property. So maybe they go to CoStar and they're saying, okay, what rent assumption should I use? What vacancy assumption should I use? Maybe they go to comps and they do, okay, let's pull an insurance comp for this state. Florida right now is a disaster when it comes to insurance, but you get the point, right? Maybe they're doing a property tax analysis, and so they're going to a tax assessor's website and they're pulling down the mill rate for that property, and then they're pulling tax comps. The point is, In a traditional institutional acquisition shop, you're several days to aggregate information. So I really enjoy family history. So I like to learn about like who I'm related to, right? Going back, and my parents actually met in a family history library, right? Like back in the old days, they called it genealogy, right?
Oh, wow.
So my parents met, just kind of researching ancestors, and this relates to real estate, and up until, I don't know, a few years ago, the process of, okay, if you wanted to find out who your 7th great grandfather is, you would have to find, say, a census record from maybe your 6th great grandparent, and that would show who their parent was, right? So you'd find it in a library somewhere, and then you'd find the census record that showed that they had lived in the same household, and that 6th great grandparent was a daughter or son of your 7th great grandfather. And once you find that, you go, oh, okay, interesting. Well, that and then the good old fashioned way. I remember my dad doing it. He just on paper, right? He'd write it down, and that's how you find out who it is. What they have now is an AI that does that searching for you. Searches all the trillions. I don't know how many there are, billions, or whatever the records of census are, and say. And it will search this and say, okay, I think that this record relates to a potential relative of yours, right? That AI does all the work that in the past you would have had to go to the library, search through to find that census tract. It does that.
Yes.
For all of your relatives. Come to real estate. Imagine a tool that could search the entire world of data at your fingertips and say, here are all the data points that relate to that one property. And instead of the analyst spending 2 or 3 days doing it, it was instant for them, right? That's one example of how this will just accelerate or elevate what we in commercial real estate do.
Yeah, I'm adding not a point, almost I guess you call it. I don't even know what you call it.
An observation.
An observation or just a remark. The competitive advantage of larger real estate shops or shops that are established is obviously there's capital to invest in resources, right? To invest in data. And that effectively gives a lot of these shops a competitive advantage. What's happening now is the data is becoming...
Sorry, go ahead. I'm having this thought, but go ahead. I'm not going to interrupt yours.
This data is again, there's this concept of big data has been around forever. That's not new. It's just becoming, in the real estate world, it's been slow to adapt, but it's becoming more and more available. I don't know how this plays out. I don't know where I'm going with this one.
well, let me just jump in here because I think when you look at the way that a small company operates compared to the way some of these huge companies operate, there's that analogy of, how do you turn around a huge cruise ship, 1 degree at a time? I think that we are going to start seeing smaller firms have a huge competitive advantage over larger firms, mostly because they're going to adopt a new way of doing things and a new tool faster than the big companies. Like the big companies have people, have legacy, have tradition, it's always been done this way, have operations, SOPs, everything built on top of people and all that kind of stuff. You get a small family shop come in, and they can do maybe analyzing how, name it, how many deals come in their door. They can do that. And all of these things by sourcing automation plus AI. Automation plus AI. Go ahead.
They needed to hire some, before, shops would need to hire subject matter experts, right? And for example, people who know how to code. To be able to then gain access to these tools. And now with what's happening with AI, you mentioned no code. you won't need that subject matter expert. So it levels the playing field. You'll be able to find the resources you need and build them with off-the-shelf things that are coming to you daily, and you'll be able to start competing. So I think what's happening now is a leveling of a playing field for everyone, not only in commercial real estate.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go back and forth between whether this benefits the big companies more or the smaller companies more. I agree with you that companies with legacy issues, legacy tech, legacy processes, tradition is a significant barrier to adoption. At the same time, what they have is, now whether they can use it or not is a different thing, but they have data.
Yes.
And data is far more valuable today than it was 6 months ago because of AI. And if you can train a bespoke AI model on your data, you win.
Right.
And they have more data than the small companies do. But to Sam's point, can they actually accomplish it? And most of the big institutional real estate firms that I've interacted with, they're too cumbersome. There's too much bureaucracy, and no offense to any of our peers, and I think they'd be the first to admit. In fact, I was speaking to a good friend this past week. I won't name him, who works at one of these big firms, and he was lamenting how long it takes to produce an investment committee memo.
Yeah.
And I was describing the investment committee memo. Well, we automate our investment committees memos, so they're automatically produced. And he was describing this process of 10 plus people and dozens of hours, 40 something pages, all manual to produce an investment committee memo. And he's like, if only we could adopt what you were doing. He's like, it's just impossible though. And they're trying to do it incrementally. It's like, okay, this one page out of 40, let's see if we can automate that one page. And the barrier to that is so difficult because everyone's done it that way forever. This is the technology they have. They got to go through multiple levels of approval to change any of this.
Yeah. So the barrier to entry typically is data and then the ability to extract valuable information from that data. And a lot of these smaller shops couldn't afford or just didn't have access to data, right? And I am thinking of a lot of third-party providers right now. Their data is essentially public information. And their value add is that they're able to go out and exhaustively extract all of this public information, aggregate it, and then package it up and then sell it to real estate shops. Well, now, because the data is all public, maybe there's a little finagling, so to speak, but at the push of a button, a lot of these small shops could duplicate those efforts. So it kind of goes to software as a service potentially going away, which we had mentioned. These third-party data providers who are really just repackaging public information, they're at risk, and then the opportunity opens up for these small shops to be able to then get a level playing field, you could say, to then have the ability to extract the value.
Yeah, and I think if you are producing proprietary data, that data is far more valuable than it was. And therefore, it's easier now, thanks to AI, to accumulate proprietary data if you're disciplined about it. And so now that this is to the argument that the smaller shop is going to win in this race, because assuming they're disciplined, if they can accumulate proprietary data, they're going to be able to use it better than the bigger firms can, even if the bigger firms want to. Just the legacy challenges.
I don't know.
Even consider not just shops having this advantage, but positions. You look at somebody that is, hiring analysts or whatever the case may be. At some point in time, wouldn't it make more sense to outsource all of your analyst work to one place that has maximized the potential of AI, and you just say, hey, instead of us hiring these people and trying to do this ourselves, they have nailed it, have a proficient, system. We send all of our, everything to that firm. to analyze deal. It comes back and it goes to the next level, whatever they pass back to us. That is what the disruption could look like, which, by the way, anytime there's disruption, there's opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think you have the firms that are just going to be, that have the flexibility and the speed to adopt these new things. But these positions are also, you can say, well, they're vulnerable. My future as a career professional in this thing is vulnerable. Well, maybe you just had the most, like, maybe this is the most opportunistic time to get in real estate that there ever has been.
You know, what's interesting, you talking about this, is that there's a debate when a firm or a shop develops some amazing tool. There's always a conversation about whether we offer this to the market or we use it as our own competitive advantage, right? Like, we have a tool, and you mentioned it, right? Like, you perfect the underwriting process and you have this tool and you can offer that to the market. In my mind, when you said that, I was like, man, would you keep that in-house and make that a proprietary thing that gave you a competitive advantage? And when I thought about it, it's like, well, no, because everybody can now have access to potentially do the same thing, you know? And if you crack the code early enough, there is an opportunity out there to go and do that. So,
I mean, I think one of the low-hanging fruit, so there's this concept, Sam, of a lease abstract. I think you're somewhat familiar with it. It's you got a lease. The lease is 100 pages or 20 pages, somewhere in between there. And as a landlord or as a prospective landlord, you want to understand the summary of that lease. What's the rent? What are the landlord's responsibilities relative to the tenant responsibilities? Are there termination options? There's what's the term of the lease? How is the rent change over time, right? So there's all these like tidbits that you want to pull out of it. And in fact, on the website, we have a lease abstract on Adventures Here. We give away for free in the same way, right? And it's an Excel file. And traditionally, how it's done is there is an individual who's trained to abstract leases. Some firms use overseas talent to do that, to make the cost more effective. But in essence, someone reads that entire 60-page lease. And let's say there's 40 data points that you want to pull out of that lease, and they'll look through the lease and they'll fill out that Excel file or whatever that may be. And I've been playing around with abstracting, having one of these natural language models abstract the lease. And I would argue it's as good as your overseas talent. And in many instances, as good as your analyst. Or in most instances, as good as your analyst. And in many instances, as good as your seasoned professional. And so your first pass of the lease abstract, automated. And so the days of paying $300 for a company to abstract your lease for you, I think, are going away.
Can I ask a question real quick? So let's say you build that tool and it does exactly what you're saying. I'm just thinking tactically. Wouldn't you then just say, okay, fill out this spreadsheet and then have a column next to it? Also, tell us where you got that information. So
totally.
So we can go back through, validate the information, and then there's probably going to start to occur in these contracts when you're doing a deal. This lease has been evaluated by AI. If any of these assumptions are incorrect, we reserve the right to reverse or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me ask you, in that lease abstract process.
And this isn't hypothetical, by the way.
I'm sure you've gone through a couple iterations, and knowing you've got it down. If you want to do it, I want to ask you, how long does it take you to do a lease abstract now with what?
Personally or with the AI tool?
With the AI tool. How long does it take now?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Oops.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
And the reason it's 30 seconds is because I have to upload the lease file to Ask Your PDF.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes 10, 15 seconds. And then I have to grab the doc ID and drop it into ChatGPT and then a prompt, paste my prompt.
So hold on. So there's two personalities listening to this. One is like, uh-oh.
Right. Exactly.
And the other one's like, oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So I think I think we appeal to the sensibilities of both sides because they both have merit.
Yeah.
But I think there's an oh and there's a aha.
Well, I don't know that just exposing the reality, right? It's true. And this is what we talked about in the last episode. There is a plurality of emotions and feelings and thoughts about what's going on right now. But I wanted to bring that home. How long did it take you to do something that people made a career out of? Right? Or at least a bulk of their career. Well, it takes them 30 seconds. And I don't know what that does. There's other functions, other things that you can do.
Evolution. We evolve to the next high value proposition, and we become better. We get, more deals, better deals, whatever it is. It's
but to your point, like it's hard to say to some person, hey, look, you got to evolve, buddy. Time to evolve. You have to. It's true. It's just I don't want to understate the emotional feeling that could be happening. Like this is a real, and this is permeating and it's not permeating that much in commercial real estate yet, as opposed to some other industries, but it is here and it's coming, and you should be preparing now.
Well, so Sam, you described two people listening. I think there's a third, which is the yeah, but person, right? And again, no offense to any of the three. I think all are natural reactions. The yeah, but I have interacted with a fair amount. As one thing that I've always been passionate about in my career is like efficiency and improvement. And I was part of a shop where we had in my mind, a very inefficient process for developing materials for approval. And so I developed this tool that largely automated a component of that. And there was a yeah, but crowd. The yeah, but had really two issues. The first is, well, how do you know it's accurate? And so I think there's a lot of people going, yeah, but what if it gets it wrong? The lease is so key. And I think, Sam, you described one solution, which is you got to validate it, right? There needs to be some validation. In the same way that if you have some 6-month analyst briefing your lease, you probably want a more seasoned person to also validate it, right? So that the first is it accurate? The second is, yeah, but how do you train the next generation? And this tool that I created in this other firm, one of the pushbacks I got was, yeah, but this is an important tool. This is an important process for our younger people to learn the industry. Because they have to do this manual work, they learn what a lease actually is. How do you respond to those people? They say, well, yeah, but that means no one will ever read a lease. Don't you want your people to read leases? Like, how are they going to know what makes a good lease and a bad lease if they're just turning it over to a machine to brief the lease for you? How do you respond to those people?
First I would ask the question, is that valid? The principal key that you want to hit with your response back is, are these people going to learn how to read a lease? If we found a more effective way, I'm answering this question. If we found a more effective way to get the work done, then that leaves time for a more efficient training on what a lease is, to where these people don't have to spend months reading leases. They can have a highly focused time period where they're training about key things to look for in leases, and that could take a week. You could develop a supplementary tool that talks about what exactly you want to check for, and these people could be reviewing and making sure.
Or in other words, do you actually need to read a lease? I mean, imagine, I think the day's coming where you have two AI attorneys negotiating the lease.
Wow, we're laughing, but what if?
Well, you laugh, but like the business people, what we care about are the business points, and all the legal. It's like, we'll turn that over to the attorneys. I mean, imagine the day. But the point is, the first question you're really asking, the premise is, you need to actually read leases. Do you need to read leases? And I'm not suggesting you don't. I'm posing the question: is that skill actually important for a real estate investment?
I think yes. I think leases are not templatized for the most part. There's legal creativity in leases. And, you mentioned all these bullet points of leases that you need to extract. But what you're really trying to understand for, other than the nuts and bolts, is what is the risk of this lease? And so if there's a lot of creative things and you're assuming this risk, it's in certain asset classes, most asset classes, it's everything. It's your cash flow. So I personally believe you should, at this point, need to read a lease. Now, is there AI out there that's coming that can identify some some issues better than humans? The answer is possibly yes.
Probably yes.
Probably yes. Possibly yes. I'll leave it at that for right now.
I'm not sure, but I think if you go back to, we're doing lots of loops here, but I just keep coming back to the co-pilot idea. Like the person that is wielding the sword of AI in any capacity is going to have to be like the people that are really going to thrive are the people who are just good at the fundamentals, know how to coach and prompt and work within the tools provided, whatever, if it's, reading a lease, evaluating a lease, they're going to be able to do 100 of them instead of one. And that's a value add for anybody. I don't know why any business wouldn't just flip out in excitement being able to do that. You can actually say, hey, instead of our capacity now with the people we have, we can evaluate X amount of deals per month. Now you can do X amount times 100.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Whenever there's a major crisis at an organization, somebody's head rolls, and that's how you solve the problem, right? Well, if you implement AI and it's automated everything, like whose head roll when there's like a massive breakdown or something? Maybe the person who implemented it's the first.
Well, so let me. I'll tell you.
There needs to be accountability and responsibility is what I'm getting at, and that is what I think creates the biggest risk to the but crowd in a institution like that, is that there needs to be personal accountability all the way up the chain.
Well, I'll give you one example of how we're using this in my software company, and then maybe let's wrap this up. So we have a series of, when you're managing, optimizing marketing campaigns, of things that a person, we call a media buyer, they will do this. They'll go through, they'll evaluate something that's happening and make some, very predictable adjustments to that marketing campaign to keep it producing results. Jumping in and out of different marketing ad accounts can take time. Evaluating it can take time. You're talking about an hour per account on average. We're using AI right now to evaluate common issues, and then that same media buyer could look at the metrics and hit a quick action. And the quick action could be do this, do this, do that. Now, the quick action that it makes available is going to be executed by a person, but instead of spending an hour, they're going to spend 30 seconds. So that just meant that person in 1 hour can do 120 times more actions than they could do. So now, like one media buyer can now handle, 500 accounts instead of 50.
Well, let me give a real estate example now that I think is relevant, and let's move now to the underwriting side, real estate financial modeling side of this. So we teach that real estate financial modeling is what you're doing is forecasting the future, right? And so in the same way that a meteorologist will forecast whether it's going to rain tonight, rain tomorrow, rain the next day, what the temperature is going to be tonight, tomorrow, the next day, what do? Well, they build a model and they have inputs. And those inputs, the quality of those inputs determine the quality of their outputs. And the quality of their outputs determine their credibility. Mm-hmm. And in real estate, the quality of your outputs determine your profitability, and your profitability determines how much money you make, both in a career and as a professional. And so your inputs are key, is the point. And so there's this exercise right now, right, where one of your key inputs is going to be, let's say, cap rate. Okay, your reversion cap rate. And that reversion cap rate, how do you derive it? Well, it's a function of today's market cap rate. And how do you arrive at the market cap rate? You pull comps. And so how does a traditional shop pull comps today? They email the broker, they go to CoStar, they go to, whatever their preferred data source is, and they put a comp set together. And it's a somewhat laborious task. And by the way, this is just one input of, in some cases, hundreds of inputs that go into a model. And so there's this laborious task of pulling comps. Well, for fun, that's kind of for fun. It was actually for real. I got my personal property tax bill for 2023, and it was excessive. Went up 40%. It's ridiculous in Colorado. And where in some states they cap how much it can increase every year, there was no such cap in Colorado. I had this big increase in my property tax, and I'm like, I'm going to appeal this thing. Well, to appeal it, what's the process? Well, traditionally, what I would do is I'd go out, I'd pull some comps that would support the value that I think is a reasonable property tax assessment value for my property. Instead, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to try ChatGPT's new, some of their new plugins, and they have a plugin with Zillow, okay, right? And I know Zillow is not relevant to commercial real estate, but Zillow can be a proxy for really any data provider. And instead of the manual process of going through an MLS or going through Zillow or Realtor.com and pulling comps and identifying which are the right comps, what I simply did is I went to the AI. I said, I need to appeal my property tax. I need comps for this address that sold in the last 6 months that support a value of X. Or if I didn't have a value, I could say that are comparable to this property at this address. And in a matter of seconds, I had a longer list than I needed of comps. And then I asked it to organize those comps in a way that I could then present to the taxing authority. And it did that. And in a matter of minutes, I had a property tax appeal prepared, or the support that I needed. Now, that's just one input.
We want to know if it got like what the bill is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So the outcome was I had, they valued it at Y. I appealed and proposed a value of X, and they met me in the middle. And now I'm in this point where like, do I fight more for X or do I accept the middle? My time's such, it's not that much more. I'll probably just accept it. But the point is I did save myself some money by going through that exercise. But as it relates to real estate.
Wait, hold on. This
Yeah.
is an AI show. I mean, just have ChatGPT fight with these guys, go back and forth. It's not your time.
What do you mean your time?
It's ChatGPT's time, exactly.
Well, that's how the government gets you. Is the next step is I'd actually have to do an in-person appeal.
Oh.
And where the first step is an online appeal. And so it's like, okay, do I really want to go online? And I could, right? And I could have ChatGPT or whatever AI model produce some material that I can then go in person. And my time's probably not worth whatever the tax amount was. But
they knew their target market here. And I'm like, oh, we know it. We know how to take this.
No, they're smart. They know what they're doing. But the point is it relates to anything, right? So it's coming. You need to get your comp set together. The first iteration of your comp set can be created or assembled by AI.
Okay, so let's wrap it up here. I got one final question. I'm going to give it.
We have more examples, but
I'll give it to you, Michael, and then you, Spencer, to finish. Real estate's a relationship business. Yes or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Does that change? If so, how? If not, talk to me about that idea.
This is one area.
Yeah.
This is one area I think AI is exciting because it gives you the freedom to prioritize your relationships. And that goes from top to bottom, from in any position. Now, this could go in many ways. Again, we're at the infancy of this AI revolution. But, theoretically, where this is heading is that there is, like you mentioned, a guy who's reviewing his accounts could do 120 when he was doing 3 prior. Well, you can 10x your productivity, and then you have that extra ability to go out and network and foster those relationships more. So I think this opens up an amazing opportunity to be able to grow your network a lot more, just because it allows you to automate a lot of the tasks that you couldn't before.
All right, Spencer, final word.
Oh, 100% agree. That's exactly right. To me, the relationship piece is one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of commercial real estate, both in terms of you develop unique proprietary insights, oftentimes by talking to people. Mm-hmm. You source great deals through talking to people.
Trust.
You build trust through talking to people. You find the right people for your team by getting out there. And to unlock your time, to spend it building relationships and or thinking critically about investments, and not spending your time briefing leases or assembling comp sets, I think just makes all of us better.
Awesome. All right. Well, there's an episode. That was a fun episode. I mean, the 2 AI episodes back to back, really exciting. I think there's a lot of cool things coming with AI. And thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Adventures in CRE Audio Series. For show notes and additional resources, head over to www.adventuresincre.com/audio series.